My Side of the Story by Malificent. This is for Sleeping Beauty. Success. There are 3 rules of thumb that I always follow. Number 1, always return an insult with generosity. Number 2, never hold a grudge. Number 3, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. These 3 simple rules are the key to a rich and rewarding life. And I should know. Until my recent troubles, I was the most successful businesswoman this side of Kingdom Come. Enchantment Value Industries Limited, that's my corporation. EVIL for short. Maybe you've heard of it. We specialize in market enterprise. And I can proudly say we have branches all over the world. But my success has come at a price. Over the years, I've been the victim of a lot of vicious gossip. People say I'm a ruthless witch. I simply know what I want. They say I lead a gang of hideous goblins. My company maintains a strict policy of non-discrimination. And they say a storm of wrath and frustration continually thunders around my castle in the Forbidden Mountains. It may be a bit rainy, but I got an incredible bargain on real estate. Really, it's amazing what people will say to drag a good, hard-working woman's name through the mud. But the ugliest rumor I ever heard was that I placed a curse on Princess Aurora. Complete and utter nonsense. I'll admit I've never been close to the royal family. Aurora's meddling father, King Stefan, has been a fly in my bubbling brew since the day I opened my company's door. But I've always had a soft spot for the princess. The fact is, I felt sorry for her. And when you hear my side of the story, you'll know the truth. I've gone out of my way to help her since the day she was born. Generous offer. I was out of town visiting my poultry ranch. We breed a rare variety of golden egg-laying geese. When I heard that King Stefan and his queen had given birth to a baby girl. I myself am not a family-oriented person. My work keeps me much too busy. But I was very pleased for the king and queen. When I heard there would be a baby shower, I rushed back home immediately to offer my congratulations. Imagine my surprise when, upon arriving at my headquarters, I found the mailbox empty. Could it be that the king and queen had failed to send me an invitation? Me, the founder and CEO of one of the largest corporations in the world! Don't be silly, I told myself. Surely it was an oversight. After all, their highnesses had an entire kingdom to invite. Brushing the thought from my mind like a cobweb, I donned my best black dress and set off for the palace. Well, you wouldn't believe the scene that greeted my eyes. Every second duke and third earl in the land had turned up for the party. It was a zoo. I had to elbow my way through the crowd just to get in. I arrived in the throne room just in time to see my 3 least favorite fairies in the world, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Ever since the king put those noodle heads in charge of his Pretty Our City program, they've taken themselves much too seriously. They're always flitting around the kingdom, turning ravens into bluebirds and toadstools into tulips, as if ravens and toadstools aren't perfectly nice to begin with. Everyone in the room watched as Flora approached the cradle. "Little princess," she said to the sleeping baby, "my gift shall be the gift of beauty." "Oh," the crowd exclaimed. As if that wasn't silly enough, Fauna stepped forward next. "Tiny princess, my gift shall be the gift of song," she said. "Ah," everyone sighed. Fools, I thought. I've been around long enough to know that you can't get by on a pretty face and a nice singing voice. common sense, and a good work ethic. That's what a girl needs in this day and age. Suddenly, I had a brilliant idea. I could offer the princess a job. It just so happens that I own several textile mills in the kingdom. We specialize in spinning straw into gold. An internship at the factory would teach her a skill, as well as provide some valuable lessons about hard work. Eager to share this splendid plan, I approached the king and queen. I admit they did not look very happy to see me. Ever since the king shut down my poison apple of the month mail order business, there has been some tension between us. Still, I thought, I could put aside our differences on this happy day. This is quite a party, King Stefan, I began. I felt truly distressed at not receiving an invitation. But before the king had a chance to apologize, that little busybody Merriweather butted in. You weren't wanted, she said rudely. Not wanted? I gasped. Oh dear. It was a dreadfully awkward moment. My first thought was to leave instantly, but remembering my first rule of thumb, always return an insult with generosity, I decided to be the bigger person. I offered the princess the job anyway. She could start before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, I explained, and not a day sooner. I've always been scrupulous about child labor laws. But rather than thank me for my generous offer, the king turned red with rage. The princess? In a textile mill? He roared. Are you mad? That's preposterous. My next statement I have lived to regret. What are you afraid of? I snapped at the king. That she will prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die? I'm afraid my sarcasm was misunderstood. The king rose from his throne. Seize that creature, he bellowed. His guards rushed toward me. Never mind, I said, shaking off their hands. I'll show myself out. Some people are so ungrateful. No hard feelings, or rule number 2. But my troubles didn't end there. That very same day, King Stefan issued a decree. Every spinning wheel in the kingdom was to be destroyed. His soldiers turned the kingdom inside out. They piled every spinning wheel they found into a huge crackling bonfire that lit up the night. Of course, this made things a tad difficult for my textile business, and it plunged the entire kingdom into a terrible fashion crisis. I didn't see the princess again for 16 years. I don't remember where I heard she was living, in the old woodcutter's cottage in the forest. Some little birdie told me, I guess. It's not as if it was a secret. In fact, the whole kingdom was talking about the princess. Recently, some ugly rumors had started to spread. People were saying that I made an evil prophecy that on the very day Princess Aurora turned 16, she would prick her finger on a spindle and die. I realized it was time to clear the air. Now, the royal family had not been kind to me, but my second rule of thumb is never hold a grudge. When I heard the king and queen were throwing a sweet 16 party for the princess that very evening, I was delighted. This would be the perfect chance to patch things up with the royal family. I decided to pay the princess a friendly visit. A plea for help. I would like to clear up some nasty lies about my visit with Princess Aurora that day. To begin with, I did not change myself into a wisp of smoke and steal into King Stefan's castle. Such nonsense. I simply walked past the guards dozing at the gate. Is it my fault the palace has lousy security? I found the princess in a bedroom high at the top of a tower. She had indeed grown into a lovely young woman with long golden hair and full red lips, but her smooth cheeks were streaked with tears, and no wonder. She was wearing a frightfully unstylish dress in a hideous periwinkle color. It nearly made me cry, too. There, I said soothingly. I have a stunning black cocktail dress you can borrow for the party. I'm sure it will fit you perfectly. The princess broke into fresh sobs. It's not that, she wailed. wailed. My life is ruined. I finally met the man of my dreams, and now I have to marry a horrible prince. I made her take deep breaths until she was calm enough to explain. It seems that on one of her nature walks, Aurora had fallen in love with a peasant boy, only to find out she was already betrothed to the son of King Hubert, her father's old golfing buddy. Tears streaming down her face, the princess begged me for help. Normally, I do not do charity work, but I remembered my third rule of thumb: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I asked myself, if I was in the princess's pitiful periwinkle shoes, would I want a clever person like myself to step in and save the day? The answer was simple: yes, I would. Why not pretend to be dead? I suggested, thinking quickly. This will surely discourage the annoying prince. Once he's gone, you'll be free to marry anyone you please. Princess Aurora was delighted with this plan, and we promptly put it into action. For the record, I never saw a spindle, a spinning wheel, or even so much as a loose thread in that room. It's true that I helped the princess fall into a death-like slumber, but only with a perfectly safe, all-natural sleep aid. I gave her exactly 2 tablets, no more, no less, which is the recommended dosage for adults. The sun had just dipped below the horizon as she settled down for her nap. She carefully arranged her dress and fanned her shining hair out across the pillow. Before she closed her eyes, I asked her for one last favor. Would you mind meeting my true love at the woodcutter's cottage? She pleaded. Just explain to him what has happened. I was tempted to refuse. I had done enough good deeds for one day. But before I could say no, the princess was asleep. The prince. There was a rap at the cottage door. Come in, I said. The door swung open, and a young man stepped into the room. He wore a red hat and a dashing cashmere cloak. I immediately recognized him as Prince Philip, King Hubert's son. What a pleasant surprise, I explained. I was expecting a peasant, and lo, I meet a prince instead. And not just any prince, Prince Philip, the very person Princess Aurora was engaged to marry. What are you doing here? He asked. Where's that cute country bumpkin I met in the woods? Then it dawned on me, Prince Philip was the young man Aurora had mistaken for a peasant boy, and by some charming twist of fate had mistaken Princess Aurora for a peasant girl. I was just about to explain this to the prince when I looked at him again. I thought better of it. His boots were caked with mud. He smelled like a horse, and when he took off his hat, his hair was a mess. How disappointed Princess Aurora would be when she woke up and found her true love looking as if he'd been run over by a hay wagon, I thought. Wouldn't it be better for the young lovers to meet feeling clean and refreshed? Against my better judgment, I did yet another good deed. I'm afraid your girlfriend has been delayed, I said. In the meantime, would you like to join me for a cup of tea and a friendly chat at my office? You could tidy up while you're there. Prince Philip happily accepted my invitation. Leaving the cottage behind, I escorted him back to the Forbidden Mountains. In no time at all, I had the prince comfortably settled in the dungeon, as we affectionately call our office lounge. Then, over a cozy cup of wormwood tea, I told him about the princess. I was just at King Stephan's castle, I explained, and in the topmost tower, Princess Aurora lies asleep, dreaming of her true love. But you're never going to believe this. She is the same peasant maid who won your heart just yesterday. By the time I'd finished explaining, I had tears in my eyes. It was such a touching story. It just proves true love conquers all, I said. Of course the prince was eager to see the princess as soon as possible. But wouldn't you know it, at that very moment I received word of an emergency at work. 3 billy goats had caused a traffic jam on one of my troll bridges. Quickly setting down my cup, I told Prince Philip I had some urgent business to attend to. Would you mind waiting for me here? I asked. I won't be long. It's true that in my distraction I may have accidentally locked Prince Philip in the dungeon, but dear me, there were plenty of employees around. All he had to do was knock on the door and someone would have let him out. I swear, with simpletons like this in power, sometimes I fear for the future of our kingdom. Trouble. Moments later, I was upstairs in my office when I heard a commotion down in the courtyard. Looking out the window, I saw Prince Philip galloping away on his horse. He dodged several arrows and narrowly missed a bath in boiling oil, poured from the parapet by my security guards. Dear me, I said to myself, the prince must have forgotten his visitor's pass. I hurried out to the balcony to stop him, but there I received a horrible shock. My favorite pet raven was sitting on the railing, turned to stone. That's when I noticed three familiar red, blue, and green shapes racing away from the prince. It was those nasty little fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Instantly I knew they were behind this vile prank. Now don't get me wrong, I can take a practical joke, but animal cruelty is no laughing matter. Those three fairies have always been jealous of my success. They were just looking for a chance to pull a stunt like this, only this time they'd gone too far. I intended to scold the fairies and give Prince Philip a good talking to, but when I finally caught up with them at King Stephen's castle, the sight before me filled me with alarm. With the sword in one hand and a shield in the other, Prince Philip was hacking away at the tangle of thorns and overgrown shrubbery around King Stephen's castle. The king's gardeners are as lazy as his security guards. At first I thought he was just pruning the hedges in a bit. Then I caught sight of the crazed gleam in his eyes. I knew then there could only be one explanation for the prince's odd behavior. Those three nasty little fairies had cast a spell on him. Those good fairies turned bad, buzzed like hornets around the prince's head, whispering in his ear, no doubt about it, those pixies could stir up a lot of trouble. Well, I called for help, but every single soul in that fool palace seemed to be asleep. It's a wonder that anything gets done in the kingdom at all. It looked like it was up to me to put a stop to this tomfoolery before something or someone really got hurt. I have since heard it rumored that I transformed myself into a fire-breathing dragon. I admit I may not have been my usual charming self at the moment. I may have snapped at the prince a few times, but I certainly did not deserve what happened next. Raising his sword, Prince Philip heaved it with all his might. The sword sailed through the air as if propelled by magic and struck me in the chest. Luckily, I happened to be wearing an entire suit of chainmail beneath my dress. Experience has taught me to never leave home without it. The sword bounced harmlessly away, tearing only my cloak, and I escaped down a steep ravine. I count myself lucky to still be alive today, but I am sorry to say that my business did not get off so easily. After my encounter with the prince and those three bad fairies, some very hurtful gossip about me spread around the kingdom, and EVIL was forced to shut down. The goose farm, the textile mills, and the troll bridges were all repossessed and sold to the highest bidder. I'm hoping it's only a temporary situation. In the meantime, however, life isn't so bad. Now that I'm not so busy, I have more time for charity work. Just last week, I helped a sweet old woman do some repairs on her gingerbread house. A pair of young hooligans had eaten half of the roof. This is just scandalous how children behave these days. Despite all my troubles, I have learned a valuable lesson. Although I love being in charge of EVIL, it was too big a job for just one person. Now I have a fourth rule of thumb. What one can do well, two can do better. For my next business venture, I've teamed up with some of my best friends. I have so many ideas. Big Bad Wolf Home Demolition, Captain Hook's Cruise Line, Jafar's Magic Carpet Import-Export. I've realized the possibilities are endless when you work together. Of course, I'll still be in charge. Some things never change. The end.